Hello folks, Jason Chrisman, JC's Bees, your Central Ohio beekeeper. Today what I'd like to do is continue on last week's topic of cleaning up frames and equipment from dead out colonies. I had a lot of questions on different situations of frames and dead outs particularly, and what to do with them. So I'm going to go over those today. But first, I'd like to share a little video. I went through some of my nukes here behind me that you can see off to the side of the screen there, and I had a few dead outs on my own, and I was cleaning them up, and I came across another colony that was quite surprising. I couldn't believe the situation in which they survived, and I'll show you just what I mean here. Check this out. I don't know how, folks, but this colony has survived, and they have a small moat in the bottom of the colony. This is one of those polystyrene or styrofoam hives, or nuke boxes, and I'm just now going through it. Bees are still alive, but with the colony or the nuke box tilted forward, I would guess there's a good 3/4 of an inch of rainwater or melted snow water in the bottom of the colony. And the reason for that is it was a double box, a double deep. And as you can see, these wooden boxes don't fit quite so well. Now, with that being said, all this excess overhang on the bottom box, that's how the water was able to get in there. I've since removed the top box because there wasn't much in it. It's sitting over here to the side. And I'm gonna get ready to add another box, a 5-frame box with some capped honey. But I just thought it was interesting that they survived with all that water in the bottom. So look at all that water. There's 2-3 cups of water there, and I spilled a little bit. The water was so deep that with the nuke tilted forward, the front bottom corner of the deep frames was actually underwater. Unreal. And to think they survived. Isn't that pretty amazing? They had that water in there, and you know it's been in there 3/4 of the winter, if not all winter, because back in late fall and early winter, we had more rain as precipitation than snow because it just wasn't cold enough. So you know that water was down there. It had to be, you would think, causing all kinds of condensation problems, but the bees lived, amazingly enough. Okay, so now let's get on to some of these frame situations, and each one of these situations is going to be frame based, and they're each a little different. One person asked me, what do I do with the frames that have dead bees down in the cells? Well, first of all, that's a good sign that the colony starved. If you see hundreds or thousands of bees with their heads buried down in the cell, they were looking for food. One person asked if I pick them out with tweezers, and you know, I guess I can see why you would think that, but with the experience I have now, I had to chuckle. And in a few years, that person will look back and they'll chuckle too, I'm sure. But that is not what I would do. I would sweep off the bees that are just on the outside of the frame or outside of the cells, and then I would store that frame until I needed it. And maybe I'm making splits, whatever it may be. And then when the time comes and I need that frame, I'll introduce it to a new colony, and the bees in that living colony will then clean those cells and polish them all up, and the queen will begin to lay in it. They'll store nectar in it, pollen, whatever it may be. So no, I do not pick them out with tweezers. Another person asked, I've got some frames that have sugar crystals down in the cells. What do I do with those? Personally, I would just treat it like stored food, or nectar, honey, whatever it may be. I would store those frames, and I would use that as a frame to feed a weaker colony or to make splits, whatever it may be. I wouldn't give it any special attention, just treat it as stored food. Wet, nasty frames. If you've got wet, nasty frames, you've got a couple options depending on the color of the comb and the situation of why it's wet. If it's just wet from moisture in the colony and by this point it's probably got a little mold on it. You can either, if it's plastic foundation, you can scrape it and re-wax coat it, or if it's wax foundation, you can just punch it out and put in a new piece. Your third option, which I might try first, I guess, would be just to set it out in the open air one day, let it dry, and then at that point analyze it and see how it looks. And if it doesn't look like it's, if you question it at all, replace it. How about that? Are capped frames of honey safe to eat after vaporizing treatments in the winter and fall? Yes. If you've got capped frames of honey, and this is what's important here, not the fact that you've treated. What's important is if you fed sugar syrup in the fall, is it actually sugar syrup you're going to be extracting and eating, or is it honey? If you know for 100% sure it's honey, by all means, extract it, eat it, sell it, whatever you want. A lot of the foods we eat contain oxalic acid. So don't be worried that because you treated with OA that you're going to poison yourself or others. It's completely safe to eat. Like I said, you just want to make sure it's not sugar syrup. Now, some of the uses, like I said, for these frames that I'm speaking of would be to make splits later in the spring. For me here in Ohio, after the locust flow, which is about the black locust flow, about mid-May, the colonies start to build up really, really quick. And at that point, it's a good time to make splits. You know, the colonies, it won't be much longer after the black locust bloom that we're starting to see swarm cells and colonies are building up that strong. So those would be a good time to use up these extra resources of frames. Another option would be to save these food frames, and it's going to be hard to hold them for very long, any length of time, because ants will eventually find them. But if you could hold them till there was a dearth, where there was no nectar flow, and then break out these food frames and give them to your weaker colonies to have something to fall back on. So I hope this helps a little bit. If you have any more questions or comments about cleaning up dead out equipment, leave them down below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you like the video, throw me a big thumbs up. That'll help boost it in the YouTube search ranks. And if you haven't, please take time to subscribe. Thanks. See you next week.